Hi, I'm Wight from FantasyWire, and I'm the guy that makes the wire fairies. So the very first thing that we've got to do when it comes to making a fairy is to make a skeleton. So in this section, I'm going to walk you through everything you need to know to make the skeleton, as well as incorporating the mount to sort of actually take the weight.
So I've done a sketch. So this is the fairy that we're going to make. We're going to make a copy of Trillion. I've printed out the scale from the book that tells me all of the different sizes. So alongside the sketch, I've done a bit of a line drawing of the skeleton so I can calculate how much material I need. I've got to remember that I've got two spines, so I've got to double the length of the spine. But when you tot all of that up, there's approximately 100 inches of skeleton material. Now, every time you make a piece of skeleton, it's not that exact. You leave bits on the end for the hands. Yeah, you leave bits probably about sort of 6 inches or so on each one of these for overlap, so you can sort of wrap it round. So there's probably about sort of 20% waste. So I probably need about 120 inches minimum to make this skeleton. So what I'm going to do now is show you how to make the skeleton material, and then we'll put a skeleton together for this pose. This is the material that I'm going to use. This is 3mm. It's about the heaviest, well, it is the heaviest wire that I use. If you go any bigger than this, then you would call it rod. It's quite soft, so it's malleable. In order to make the skeleton, I need 4 strands of this, and I need 4 strands more than 120 inches in order to have enough material to make the skeleton. So I'm going to go from this vise. I set up a bit of a pole in the background there. And that's so I can measure it from the vise to the pole and get them all the same length, because if they're not the same length, then you're just wasting some material. So I'm going to start by putting the first strand in the vise, bend that over. I've got some cutters here to cut the length. Take it over to here. And then repeat that another 3 times. There's my 4 strands. So I've now got my 4 strands in the vise. They're all the same length. So what I'm going to do now is reposition from the other end so you can see what I'm doing. I'm basically going to twist them all together. So make sure the vise is nice and tight. Now, the tool I use for twisting the wire together is very low tech. It's just a piece of wood, and I've got 4 bolts in it and a hole in the middle. And all I'm going to do is pass the 4 wires through the hole, wrap them around the bolts, and that'll secure them, and then I can put some tension on and then start to twist. So what I'm going to do now is simply lean back on this. Hopefully you can still see me. I've got four wires in the vise. They're all approximately the same length. And all I'm going to do now is just twist it. Now as I start to get to the end of the twist, what I'm looking for along the line is how even the twist is. You can go too far, and it starts to start creating sort of wrinkles in the overall length of it, where it sort of goes into like a second level of twisting because it can't cope with any more. And you want to twist it until just before it starts to do that. I've pretty much got there now. So what I've got to do now is allow it to untwist. It's not obviously going to untwist the whole thing, but it just takes the tension out of it. So if you just let go of it, it'll spin around and probably break your fingers. So that's it. But it creates a nice twisted material, and that's actually a lot stronger than the original wire, but you can still bend it, so it's ideal for skeletons. So now we've got our twisted skeleton material. We need to work out the actual pieces that we want. So here's the little sketch that I did to show me the sizes, but if I just on the back do an extremely simple sort of diagram of the pieces that you need, What I'm going to do is do the legs as one part, like that, and then I'm going to make one spine, the shoulder and the arms out of another piece. So effectively I've got sort of 3 pieces, and you leave some extra bits because that's going to help me to attach the feet. So it isn't, that's why you need some extra material. So to consider, I need some material on the ends to tie it to the hips. So I've got to have the spine length, some material to attach it to the hips, then bend it at sort of right angles to how much that would be across the shoulders, then add the arms and then leave a little bit for attaching to the hands as well. So starting from where it's good material, so that's, I'm going to measure from the end of there to say that that's my 16 and a half roughly, so about where I'm at in the vise. So that's the top of the first leg, so I'm just going to actually bend that. So when you're doing bends, if you just bend it by hand, even though I'm holding that tight in the vise, I've got quite a curve on that. So I actually want to flatten. That makes a nice right angle bend. So it's a perfect right angle bend. Now across the hips is 4.3 from there to where I'll bend it again. So I'll now bend that. Now all I've actually got to do now is chop that off at roughly the same length, giving me some extra for attaching to the feet. So that means that's going to be the shoulder, that bit's going to attach to the hips, and that will be the spine. If I just tighten that up, right angle bend again. So I've just got a right angle bend, so you're going to have 2 inches of shoulder, then 10 inches of arm, and then a little bit to attach the hands. So I need another one the same as that. So I'm just going to lay these pieces out on the floor. So here's our diagram. So this is the pieces that I've cut. So I've got the piece for the leg. That's one of the sides, so that's spine, shoulders and arms. And then the opposite is spine, shoulders and arms. Now that's all very well if I was making a freestanding fairy, meaning that she didn't need any support. But Trillian, as you can see from the sketch, sort of stands on 1 foot. This material isn't strong enough to get it to stand on 1 foot. I couldn't sort of put that into the ground and expect to have about sort of 10 kilograms of weight resting on that. It would just bend and she wouldn't hold her shape. So by the time I've finished the skeleton, I'm going to substitute her right leg for a piece of stainless reinforcing bar, because that's strong enough to take that weight. The dilemma that you have when you're making the skeleton now is, do I attempt to make the leg out of this material first, or do I make the skeleton in the pose and then substitute the leg later, because I can then use the skeleton as a template? And that's what I tend to do. So we'll forget this for now, we'll come back to this when I've got the skeleton in that pose. So again, back to the diagram, the spine is 9.4 inches. 9.4 mark at the top of the vise. Get that quite tight, and then unwind these. So this is the extra wire. You don't actually need this much, it's just because this is one that was on the end when we were twisting the skeleton up. Take the hips part, put that into there material, and sort of wrap that round there, and get one from sort of each side. Lift that out the vise so you can see what I'm doing. It gives me a little bit more room. So obviously I need to position this. Now what I want is 2 spines to be roughly 1/3 of the length of the hips apart. So it's going to be a third to the first spine, a third to the second spine, a third to the other hip. And the vice again. The reason I'm putting it in the vice before I sort of open it up is it all wants to unravel, and I only want it to unravel down to that point. So it allows me to just untwist it without me twisting any further. That should be the same height as that one. It is. So there we have, very crude at the moment, and the reason I haven't done it very neat is, like I say, I've got to substitute one of these legs when I get the right pose. 4.6 inches to the centre of the head. So just twist that up. So that's sort of shoulder height. So what I want to do now is just use this as a bit of an anchor. So we've got an approximate sort of body shape now. So the shoulders are where those sort of wires are. Now both her arms are sort of facing sort of back. So what I need to do, just for the sake of having a nice tight bend, put that into the vise. Again, just triple checking. So I want the bend to be there. So that's one shoulder, so the other shoulder is so that gives me my 4.6, just over 4.5 inch shoulders. So I now know where the shoulders are. I've obviously got to decide which way round she faces. Just because looking at it, the neck is in front of those shoulders, I'm going to choose that as the front because the neck is always in front of the shoulders. So I'll make this the front, which means her spine gets bent back that way. So 8.2 from the hips. One knee. So I can start to put her into the pose now. So the legs are not simply straight lines like that with a sort of knee in the middle. Legs from the hips effectively come together so the knees sort of meet. So that's an angle that we need to get in. Then the shins are sort of parallel, but they're not straight. So if I draw it sort of sideways on as well, if that's the hips, from the hips to the knees, there's a curve in that direction in the bone, but it's straight looking from the front, but they go from the hips to the knees. So they come in together, but there's a curve on the side profile. On the side profile from the shin is sort of straight, although it always looks like it's bending the other way on a drawing. It's because the angle of the line of the muscles. But from the front, there's actually a curve, a subtle curve in that direction. I'll exaggerate it in the drawing. So let's start by making sure that those hip joints make the knees come together. Right, so let's just bend. So, not perfect, but the sort of knees roughly come together. To go out that way. So, from the hips to the knees that are coming in, so we need to put a bit of a curve in that direction, so we can just do this by hand. Put a bit of a curve in there. Bit of a curve in there. Bring that back up. The knees almost meet, so the shins curve in that direction. Well, as the legs as a sort of baseline sort of starting point. So if I now try and get the whole figure into the vice sort of spine now. Started to get there. The neck sort of comes out and sort of round, but doesn't want to be too exaggerated. So you get a nice line going up the spine, and then that goes in. Now, because of the pose that we're doing here, she needs to have her shoulders elevated. Back. And then that's better to be tight, same as this one. That leg is fairly straight, so I'll just straighten that knee out now that I know where it is. And it sort of goes back a bit, where this leg has got to come right up, so I need to rotate that right round. Probably need to put that in the vice. Get it in there. So it's still facing in a bit. So it's a nice sort of tight joint by doing it in the vice. That leg still comes in as it sort of would. So we're starting to get there. So we need to work out where our ankle and that is now. So just put a foot. Going to be fairly vertical, judging by where her centre. I'm trying to work out where her centre of gravity is going to be, and where that rod needs to go. So that's not at all bad. So we need a bit of a sideways on, because the leg is sort of coming in. There's a bit of a side. So when, now that I've got that shape, I need to replace that leg with the rod that's going to support it. Now it does seem like an awful lot of trouble that I've gone to get all of that shape to now completely dismantle it from the sort of waist down to replace it with this. But there's no other way that I could sort of produce the skeleton to see all the subtleties of the curves that I need in there if I was just working from a rod on its own. I couldn't just bend this material as easy as I've been bending the skeleton material to find out what that shape would be. And that's why I make it out of the skeleton material and then use that as a template. So I won't just take the rod up to the hips, which would seem the obvious thing to do. And the reason for that is there'll be quite a bit on. She's going to weigh about sort of 10 kilograms by the time she's finished, and that's an awful lot of weight, and it will try to rotate around the rod. So what I need to do is take the rod right from below her foot, through her ankle, up her thigh, and across the hips. So I've got right from there, bend it all the way round, and that gives me a solid sort of, at least a good right angle to hold the whole thing together so nothing can turn. So the first bend is going to be across the hips and then down that thigh. So what I need to do is just mark that distance. Now I'm not going to go all the way across, because what I want to do is I'm going to leave this sort of leg and cross piece in at the same time, and then these wires will go around both. So the hips are going to go just on the inside of that, so just put a chalk mark on there. So I'm going to put that in the vise. Now this time I don't put that right up against the vise, because I need to heat it up. And if I heat it up right next to the vise will act as like a big heat sink and just soak up all the heat, and I'll never get it hot enough. So I'm just going to heat it up there. That'll be locally hot, and then that'll be the softest part, and it will bend fairly tight anyway. What I'm hoping to do, I'll just try it in here actually. I haven't quite gone far enough. Get that the same angle as those hips. And we're about there, that's about right. Put a little curve in. It's just the tight bends. And then I've got to bend it from that point there to come out and match that. Let's have a comparison with this. So from that, we're not far off, and that way we're pretty good. So that is about it. So now that I've got that to match that, what I've got to do now is actually take this leg out, cut that off there, and then put this in with that other one, and then wrap the spines back around the two of them. Right, so although that was quite a tussle. I've now got effectively that leg replaced with a rod, and the original sort of left leg is attached with the skeleton, still goes across the hips to sort of match. So all I've actually done is saw that off and replace it. Like I said, it's quite a tussle. What I need to do now is go around the whole skeleton, get it in the right pose to make sure that all of the subtleties of all the curves and that are in there. I've kinked it where the elbows are, because even when you lock your arm straight, it's not a perfect straight line. You can't get it fully straight. So where the elbows are, I've just put a very slight kink. Done that by just putting it in the vise and sort of tapping it round. So I'm sort of getting there. I'm quite sort of liking the pose, and it is just spending time trying to get the sort of emotion into this skeleton that I want to be seen in the finished figure before I add wiring and start to tighten it up. It sort of looks a bit sort of just not enough energy in it at the moment. So. Look from, just put it sideways on. See what I want to do. Just make that a little bit more upright. Trying to get a centre of gravity over the base, so it looks like she's stood on one foot and not leaping forward. So I've got my skeleton, and I've got an extra piece of this sort of thick wire. We've drilled a hole through there where the sort of base of the foot will be. And I'm going to pop this into a stand, and that's just to stop it sort of dropping too far into the stand. When I put it into the stand, I can now sort of appreciate how she will look when she's sort of got wire added to her. But it's still a bit sort of loose. You know, it's solid enough to hold its shape, but it's not solid enough that it won't get distorted as I add the wire. So what I'm going to do now is start to add some wire, but just from a skeleton's point of view, to sort of lock all these things in place. If I was to try and wrap wire around a rib cage, it would actually pull all of these out of place and I'd start losing the shape. So I almost want to add a bit of sort of weaving in between these two spines to stop all of this movement. As you tighten these up, you can feel it put tension on the skeleton, but that's pretty rigid now. The question is she still in the right shape? Yeah, fairly happy with that. So that's the skeleton done.